If this was your last year to live, would you keep doing what you're doing today? Pause for a second. That wasn't a poetic question. It was a wake-up call. Most people drift into a new year like it's just another page on the calendar. But what if this wasn't just another year? What if 2025 was your turning point, not by accident, but by design? Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is building the habits that will make this year the most powerful, peaceful, and purposeful chapter of their life. The question is, will that someone be you? In a world that rewards constant motion, we've forgotten the value of stillness. In a world obsessed with applause, we've neglected the strength of inner approval. In a world full of noise, Stoicism teaches us one thing: your peace, your power, and your path all begin from within. This isn't motivational fluff. These are time-tested principles practiced by emperors, philosophers, and warriors for over 2,000 years. And today, they're yours to reclaim. But how do we turn timeless Stoic wisdom into real, lasting transformation in 2025? That's where the journey begins. This video unfolds in 3 powerful phases, each one building upon the last, like climbing a mountain, not just to reach the top, but to become the kind of person who can. First, we begin with self-reconnection. In a distracted, overstimulated world, we've lost touch with the most important person in our lives, ourselves. These first habits are about slowing down, turning inward, and rediscovering clarity, purpose, and presence. Next, we move into inner fortification. Life doesn't get easier, but you can get stronger. Here, we forge resilience, courage, discipline, and emotional mastery. This is where the Stoic in you wakes up. Finally, we arrive at sustainable living. True success isn't explosive, it's consistent. This phase is about building a life of balance, meaningful relationships, financial wisdom, inner peace, and values-driven living. Together, these 3 paths form a Stoic blueprint for lasting change. Awaken yourself, strengthen your core, and sustain a life of purpose. Let's explore them one habit at a time. 1. Memento Mori. Remember that you will die. She was 38. A successful lawyer in Manhattan, 2 kids, a perfect townhouse, and a calendar booked 6 months ahead. She had just closed a high-profile case. That evening, while crossing the street near Central Park, she collapsed. Brain aneurysm. Joan in 10 minutes. Her death wasn't dramatic. It was silent, ordinary. But it shook everyone around her because she wasn't sick, wasn't old, wasn't reckless. She was just alive. And then she wasn't. Memento Mori. Remember that you will die. It sounds morbid at first, maybe even depressing. But for the Stoics, it was the opposite. It was clarity. It was power. In a world addicted to endless planning, future goals, retirement dreams, and someday thinking, this reminder cuts through the noise like lightning. It pulls you back to this hour, this minute, this breath. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do. Marcus Aurelius wrote that line not for effect, but for direction. He wasn't obsessed with death. He was obsessed with urgency. He knew that when you walk with death beside you, not in fear, but in awareness, you stop wasting time. You stop postponing courage. You stop waiting for permission to live the life that calls to you. The truth is, most people will die having never fully lived. They'll die mid-scroll, mid-doubt, mid-decision. They'll keep promising themselves they'll start next month, next quarter, next year as if time is refundable. But you, right now, are standing in the rarest moment of all. Awareness. You're alive, and you know you won't be forever. That knowledge is terrifying, but it's also sacred. It's the spark that can burn through procrastination, hesitation, and self-betrayal. When you live with Memento Mori in your back pocket, you speak more honestly. You love with fewer conditions. You make decisions faster because you know time isn't something you have, it's something you spend or waste. This habit doesn't require a journal, a schedule, or even 5 minutes a day. It just requires one sentence, whispered each morning before the world drowns you out. I could leave life right now. Say it, and then look at your to-do list. Do all those things still matter? The goal isn't to panic, it's to prioritize. Not to fear death, but to use it. Because in the face of death, all false urgency fades and real purpose remains. Let this be the lens through which you see the rest of 2025. The goal isn't just to build habits. It's to build a life you wouldn't regret if it ended tomorrow. So ask yourself, honestly, if this were your last year alive, would you still be living it the same way? 2. Daily journaling. Writing to see yourself clearly. You don't need to write a novel. You don't even need to write complete sentences. What you need, honesty, is a place to tell the truth. A place where no one is watching, judging, or expecting anything. Just you and the words. If Memento Mori wakes you up to how little time you have, journaling shows you how to use it wisely. Because most people don't live with clarity, they live on autopilot. They chase goals they've never questioned. They react to emotions they don't understand. And somewhere along the way, they forget who they are when no one is looking. Tim Ferriss, entrepreneur and best-selling author, has said that journaling is the most important habit he's ever developed, not for productivity, but for sanity. In interviews and his book Tools of Titans, he shares that during some of his darkest periods battling depression, indecision, burnout, turned to his journal every morning, not to solve the world, but to survive himself. Journaling, he wrote, is the closest thing I have to a spiritual practice. It's how I clear the mental windshield before I drive into the day. That's the essence. It's not about writing beautifully, it's about writing honestly. Try this. Open a page and ask, what am I avoiding right now? Then write. Don't filter, don't fix, just name it. Or ask, what would a wiser version of me do today? And let the answer rise slowly from the stillness. The Stoics practiced this long before we called it journaling. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not for history, but as private conversations with his own soul. In one entry, he reminds himself, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. That line wasn't for the public, it was for the man in the mirror. Journaling doesn't promise clarity on day one, but over time, it reveals your patterns, your excuses, your fears. It helps you slow down enough to actually hear yourself beneath the noise, beyond the ego. And when you can hear yourself clearly, you begin to live more deliberately. This is self-governance, not self-indulgence. It's not about being better, it's about being honest. And honesty, practiced privately, creates strength publicly. So tomorrow morning, before the world speaks, let yourself speak first. Not to impress, not to perform, but to reconnect. Write a few sentences, or just one, but make it true. Because until you tell the truth to yourself, every other truth will remain unclear. 3. Make stillness a daily practice. High in the mountains, just before sunrise, the cold hits different. It doesn't scream, it doesn't sting. It settles into your bones like silence. All you hear is your own breath and the slow crunch of boots on snow. There is no phone signal here, no agenda, no audience, just stillness. And yet it's in this stillness that everything becomes clearer. We live in a world that's afraid of quiet. We fill it with noise, notifications, podcasts, playlists, opinions, but silence? It unnerves us. Because silence is the only place where the truth can speak without interruption. Stillness isn't about being unproductive, it's about being undistracted. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius didn't need a cabin in the woods, she found stillness in the chaos of Roman politics. In Meditations, he reminds himself that nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. That line wasn't written in peace, it was written in battle. Stillness isn't luxury, it's survival. It's where your decisions sharpen, your emotions settle, your values return to the surface. It's where you remember who you are when no one is watching. Ask yourself, when was the last time you spent 10 minutes alone without a screen, a task, or a plan? What did you feel? Restless? Bored? Uncomfortable? Good. That's where the work begins. You don't need a monastery. You need a moment. Sit still. Breathe. Watch your thoughts pass like clouds. Let go of the need to label them, fix them, tweet them. Just watch. Behind all that noise, there is a self that doesn't panic, a self that doesn't perform. That self is who you've been avoiding and who you desperately need. Stillness is not escape, it's confrontation. And the silence is not empty, it's full of answers if you're willing to listen. In the same way, a cold mountain hike strips away distractions and ego. Practicing inner stillness clears the fog from your mind. At first, it's uncomfortable. Then, it becomes essential. You'll notice you're less reactive. You respond instead of react. You begin to notice beauty in places you used to rush past. You begin to hear wisdom in pauses, and you realize silence was never the absence of something. It was the presence of everything that matters. Don't wait for the world to get quieter. It won't. You must become the quiet in the world. Fourth, the dichotomy of control, reclaiming what's yours to hold. Let me ask you something gently, but directly. How much of your energy, just this week, has gone into things completely outside your control? That rude email, that traffic jam, that person's opinion of you, the economy, the weather, the algorithm, the past. It's not judgment. We all do it. We all get caught up in the swirl. But what if the anxiety you feel isn't from what's happening? It's from trying to control what never belonged to you in the first place. The Stoics had a name for this moment of clarity. Epictetus called it the dichotomy of control. It's deceptively simple. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. What's up to you? Your choices, your actions, your effort. What's not? The outcome, the reaction, the timeline, the external noise. When you blur this line, you suffer. When you respect it, you get your life back. Think of it this way. You're holding a rope. At the other end is a horse, wild, unpredictable. That horse is the world. People, politics, weather, outcomes. If you cling too tight, it drags you. But if you let go completely, you lose direction. The wisdom is in knowing where to grip. So pause for a moment. Scan your day. Where are you holding on to something you need to release? And where have you given up on something that's actually your responsibility to carry? You don't need to control the world to feel peace. You just need to control your end of the rope. As Epictetus wrote in the Enchiridion, there is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will. Start there. Start with what is yours, your breath, your words, your choices, and watch how, quietly, power returns. 5. Purposeful Solitude. The art of choosing to be alone. In 2010, a tech CEO, young, wildly successful, already a millionaire, disappeared from public view for 30 days. No media, no emails, no meetings. He rented a remote cabin in the Pacific Northwest and took only 3 things: A notebook, a bag of books, and a rulino speaking, no posting, no distractions. His company thought he was crazy, but when he returned, he had two things: clarity and the blueprint for a product that would redefine his industry. He later said, "That month alone was the loudest conversation I've ever had with myself." Solitude. True solitude isn't just being alone, it's choosing to be alone on purpose. There's a difference. The first feels like isolation, the second feels like liberation. The Stoics understood this. They weren't monks, they were leaders, warriors, teachers, and yet they carved out moments of stillness, away from crowds, to remember who they were when no one else was watching. They knew that in the silence of solitude, the signal returns, the voice that isn't conditioned by noise, the ideas that don't come from panic or pressure but from presence. Seneca, in his letter On Noise, wrote that we should withdraw into ourselves as often as possible, for intercourse with those of dissimilar nature disturbs our settled calm. He wasn't promoting escapism, he was protecting something fragile, inner alignment. You don't need 30 days in the forest. You don't need to shut down your life. You need 1 hour, or even 20 minutes, alone. No phone, no agenda, just you, and whatever rises up when the distractions fall away. This is where the most important decisions in your life begin, not in meetings, not in brainstorms, not in the chaos of urgency, but in the still, unglamorous hours when no one is watching. When you learn to be alone well, you stop fearing emptiness. You start craving clarity. You begin to feel when something is out of alignment because you've created the quiet necessary to notice. And something strange happens. The longer you practice this, the less validation you need, the less dependent you become on being seen, understood, or praised. Solitude becomes not a place to hide, but a place to return, to calibrate, to heal, to create. You become your own counsel, your own compass. So here's the invitation. Once this video ends, don't scroll, don't text, don't rush back into the feed. Go sit somewhere quiet, set a timer, let the silence say something. Not because it's efficient, but because it's essential. When you learn to be with yourself, fully and without distraction, you realize the person you've been searching for all along has been waiting in the quiet. 6. Voluntary discomfort, reclaiming power through chosen pain. There's a man who runs 100-mile ultramarathons, not because he enjoys running, but because pain is where he feels most alive. His name is David Goggins. A former Navy SEAL, he transformed himself from a 300-pound exterminator into one of the toughest endurance athletes on the planet. But what's more important than the miles he runs is the why behind them. Goggins believes that most people live at 40% of their capacity not because they're weak, but because they avoid discomfort at all costs. Cold weather, early mornings, emotional confrontation, failure, fatigue, anything that stings, we run from. But in doing so, we also run from growth. The Stoics would have understood him. They taught that voluntarily exposing yourself to discomfort strengthens the soul. Why? Because pain, when chosen, becomes preparation. When you seek discomfort on your own terms, life has fewer surprises. You become anti-fragile, not just able to endure hardship, but made stronger because of it. There's no need to run 100 miles, but you can take cold showers, wake up earlier, do the task you've been avoiding. Train your mind to lean into challenge rather than retreat from it. Marcus Aurelius never trained in luxury. He believed that hardship was not the enemy indulgence was. In Meditations he wrote, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" He stripped life to its essentials, not to suffer, but to stay sharp. This isn't masochism, it's mastery. When you train yourself to do hard things by choice, you stop being afraid of hard things by chance. You become fire-forged, tested by trial, made resilient by resistance. The discomfort isn't the goal. The confidence it builds is. Every time you voluntarily face something uncomfortable, waking up early, staying silent when angry, saying no to temptation, you prove to yourself that you are not ruled by impulse or convenience. You are ruled by choice. And that, right there, is the foundation of power. So ask yourself honestly, what are you avoiding right now? What small discomfort, if faced today, would make you stronger tomorrow? Start there, because the warrior is not the one who feels nothing. The warrior is the one who feels the fear and moves forward anyway. 7. Courage over comfort, choosing the fire, not the cushion. He had the job offer in his inbox, 6 figures, healthcare, a title that would look good on paper. But he hesitated. Not because it was risky, but because it was safe, too safe. The kind of safe that slowly buries you under someone else's idea of success. He closed the laptop, took a long walk, then declined the offer. When asked why, he said, "It wasn't fear holding me back, it was truth pulling me forward." Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to honor your values, even when comfort is calling. And comfort always calls. It shows up in subtle ways: a salary you tolerate but don't love, a relationship that feels familiar but not fulfilling, a routine that looks productive but leaves your soul untouched. The Stoics understood that the easy road often leads to a quiet kind of suffering. Seneca warned, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare, it is because we do not dare that things are difficult." Courage, then, is not dramatic, it's not loud. It's often quiet, a choice made in solitude, when no one is clapping. The question is, when the moment comes, do you choose alignment or approval? Truth or comfort? You don't need to quit your job or uproot your life to practice courage. But you do need to step outside the line of least resistance. So here's a challenge. For the next 7 days, do one small thing each day that makes you uncomfortable. Speak up in a meeting. Apologize first. Stop the side project you've been putting off. Make the phone call. Say no. Each act will feel small, but each one will prove to you that fear is a compass, not a wall. And when you start walking toward it step by quiet step, you'll begin to remember what it feels like to live from the inside out. 8. Radical acceptance and Premeditatio Malorum, training the mind for the worst. Most people start their day with a checklist. The Stoics started theirs with catastrophe. They called it Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. Each morning they would imagine the worst-case scenarios of the day ahead. Failure, rejection, loss, betrayal, illness, even death. Not to scare themselves, but to prepare. Not to invite suffering, but to rob it of its surprise. Because what breaks you is rarely the event itself. It's your unpreparedness for it. The modern mind rejects this. We've been trained to think positive, to visualize only the best. But reality isn't obligated to match our expectations. Stoicism offers something stronger than optimism: readiness, mental fortitude built not on denial, but on confrontation. Imagine walking into a storm that you've already rehearsed in your mind. The wind still blows, the cold still cuts, but you're not paralyzed. You act from steadiness, not shock. This is the power of radical acceptance. To say, yes, this might happen, and if it does, I will endure. I will respond. I will remain who I choose to be. The alternative is victimhood, blame, bitterness, emotional chaos whenever life disobeys your script. But life is not a script, it's a series of tests. And the Stoic mindset isn't "why me?" but "try me." You can practice this today. Before your day begins, close your eyes and walk through the shadows. What if the deal falls through? What if the person disappoints you? What if the unexpected derails your plan? Then ask, who do I want to be in that moment? Calm, clear, courageous. This isn't pessimism, it's resilience. You're not wishing for tragedy. You're building the inner architecture to face it if and when it arrives. As Seneca reminded Lucilius, he robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand. True strength isn't about avoiding pain. It's about refusing to be destroyed by it. So train your mind, like a warrior trains the body not to avoid the blow, but to absorb it and keep moving forward. Start your day not with blind hope, but with mental armor, because those who are ready for anything fear nothing. 9. Constructive criticism. Letting feedback make you fierce. Most people fear criticism like fire, but the Stoics, they step to it, not because they liked being burned, but because they understood something most people never do. Feedback is fuel if you're brave enough to hold the flame. Ray Dalio, billionaire investor and author of Principles, built one of the most successful hedge funds in the world, not by avoiding criticism, but by systematizing it. At Bridgewater, his company, employees are required to give each other radical, direct feedback, even to the CEO. Dalio believes that the ability to embrace uncomfortable truths is what separates those who grow from those who stay blind. He writes, "Pain with reflection leads to progress. Not pain alone, and not praise, but pain met with the courage to examine it." That's Stoicism in action. The Stoics didn't chase comfort, they chased clarity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to welcome correction, even from those he disagreed with. Why? Because truth doesn't bruise the ego of someone who values virtue over pride. Here's the truth. Most criticism isn't fatal, but our emotional reaction to it often is. We take it personally, we armor up, we label the other person toxic just to protect our fragile sense of identity. But a Stoic doesn't do that. A Stoic listens, filters, learns. Here's a practice to try. The next time someone gives you feedback, don't respond immediately. Pause. Ask, is any part of this true? Even if 90% is noise, find the 10% you can use. That's the gold. That's where growth begins. This mindset doesn't make you weak. It makes you invincible. Because when you become the kind of person who's not afraid to be wrong, you become unstoppable in becoming right. Imagine what would happen if, for the next 30 days, you asked for honest feedback from people you trust. No defensiveness, no justifying, just listening. Not all of it will feel good, but all of it will make you better. Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." The same is true of criticism. If it wounds you deeply, it's because it hit something unexamined. So, examine it. Because the real work of strength isn't lifting weights, it's lifting your pride out of the way long enough to grow. Let others sharpen you. Let truth humble you. And let every hard truth refine you into something unshakable. 10. Amor Fati. Loving the fire that shapes you. You weren't just meant to endure life, you were meant to embrace it. Not just the wins, the beauty, the applause, but the setbacks, the losses, the silence, the pain. Amor Fati, a Latin phrase meaning love of fate. It is not passive acceptance, it is active alignment. A choice to not just tolerate what happens, but to love it as the forge that makes you. The Stoics believed that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. Not because everything is pleasant, but because everything can shape you. Fire burns the weak, it hardens steel, and your attitude toward adversity determines which one you'll be. Amor Fati says, "If this is what life gives me, then this is my path. And if it's my path, I will walk it with strength, not resentment, not resistance, but with presence." Imagine waking up to bad news, a failed project, a betrayal, an unexpected obstacle. Most people curse the moment. They ask, "Why me?" But the Stoic asks, "What now?" Because in that question is your power. You cannot undo what has happened, but you can decide what it will mean to you. You can make your pain sacred. You can use your losses as teachers. You can turn even your worst moments into the soil for your strongest self. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." That's Amor Fati, not just surviving life, but consuming it, transforming every piece, even the painful ones, into light. This isn't easy. It's not natural. It's a discipline, but like every Stoic habit, it builds a life that can't be broken by external events, because its foundation is internal choice. So the next time life throws you something heavy, don't flinch, don't run. Say to yourself, Amor Fati, let it shape you. Love not just the easy, love what tests you, because what tests you makes you. 11. Active financial balance. Building freedom through simplicity. Freedom isn't found in having more, it's found in needing less. The Stoics taught that true wealth isn't measured by your bank account, but by your relationship to desire. If you're constantly chasing the next item, the next upgrade, the next symbol of status, your financial life becomes a treadmill, always running, never arriving. But when you practice restraint, when you align your spending with your values, money becomes a tool, not a trap. Start simple. Track where your money goes for 1 week. No judgment, just awareness. You'll be surprised how often spending is emotional, impulsive, or automatic. Coffee you didn't taste, subscriptions you forgot, clothes you didn't need. None of them are wrong, but all of them are worth examining. Then ask, what truly adds value to my life? What do I actually use, enjoy, or need? Create a budget not to restrict, but to refocus. Prioritize what feeds your mind, body, and long-term goals. A course that elevates your skills. A simple, nourishing meal. A quiet weekend to rest instead of scroll. These are investments, not expenses. Seneca once said, "Wealth is the slave of a wise man, the master of a fool." The goal of financial balance is not minimalism for its own sake, but clarity, so that what you own doesn't end up owning you. Financial peace is not about perfection, it's about intention. It's knowing where your money goes and why, so that each transaction becomes a reflection of who you are, not who you're trying to impress. You don't need to sacrifice joy, you just need to define it for yourself on your terms. Because the more you learn to live with less noise, the more space you'll have for what truly matters. 12. Minimalism and simplicity. Living clearly by letting go. Simplicity is not a lack of ambition. It's the courage to say no to noise, so you can say yes to what truly matters. Greg McKeown, author of Essentialism, tells a story that captures this perfectly. Years ago, he received an invitation to a high-level meeting with a world-renowned CEO, the kind of opportunity that most people would say yes to without thinking. But the meeting was scheduled on the same day his wife gave birth to their child. He went to the meeting, and he regretted it deeply. It was a turning point. In his own words, "If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will." Since then, Greg has become an advocate for a way of living that aligns perfectly with Stoic wisdom. Do less, but do it better. Eliminate the trivial many and focus on the vital few. The Stoics didn't use the word minimalism, but they lived it. Seneca cautioned against the excesses of wealth, not because riches were evil, but because they distracted from clarity. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that unnecessary things clutter the soul. Ask yourself, how much of your energy is being spent on what doesn't matter, on obligations you never chose, on goals you inherited, not created? Minimalism isn't about counting how many items you own. It's about subtracting distraction. It's about living deliberately. When your life is packed with the unnecessary tasks, relationships, possessions, even thoughts, you lose sight of what's essential. You wake up exhausted, not because you've done too much, but because you've done too little of what feeds you. Begin here. Choose one area of your life to simplify this week. Maybe it's your schedule. Say no to a meeting that adds no value. Maybe it's your digital space. Clear your inbox, mute the noise. Maybe it's internal. Notice how often your mind replays conversations that don't need your attention anymore. Simplicity isn't sterile. It's freeing. It's the spaciousness that allows depth. When you remove what doesn't matter, what matters finally has room to breathe. Greg McKeown's story is a reminder that saying no isn't rejection, it's redirection. Every no is protecting a deeper yes. So today, ask yourself gently but honestly, what are you saying yes to that's silently costing you everything else? Let go, live light, choose clarity over clutter, because a life of fewer, better things is a life more fully lived. 13. Nurturing sustainable relationships. Building connection through clarity. Some relationships exhaust us, not because the people are bad, but because the boundaries are blurry. Expectations remain unspoken. Resentment builds silently. We smile on the outside, but shrink on the inside. Over time, we lose not only energy, but authenticity. The Stoics believed that harmony with others begins with alignment within ourselves. That clarity, not compromise, is the root of meaningful connection. Modern researcher and storyteller Brené Brown has spent over 2 decades studying vulnerability, courage, and relationships. One of her most powerful insights is striking in its simplicity. Clear is kind, unclear is unkind. It sounds soft, but it's not. Clarity is one of the most courageous acts we can offer in a relationship because it requires vulnerability. It means saying, "This is what I need," or "This crossed a line," or even, "I care about you, but this pattern can't continue." Oh, clarity isn't cold, it's compassionate. It says, "Respect you enough to be honest with you." Setting boundaries doesn't mean cutting people off. It means creating a space where love can breathe without suffocating, where expectations are known and trust has room to grow. Think of a relationship in your life right now that feels heavy. Ask yourself, have I been clear about what I need? Have I allowed assumptions to replace real conversation? Am I showing up with honesty or with armor? You can't control how others respond, but you can choose how you show up, with honesty, with grace, with the willingness to risk discomfort in the name of deeper connection. Here's a practice to begin. Choose one conversation you've been avoiding. Keep it simple. Speak with warmth, not blame. Share how you feel, what you need, and what matters most. You may feel fear at first. That's normal. But beyond that fear is the possibility of a relationship that's not built on pleasing, guessing, or pretending, but on truth. The Stoics lived by principle, not popularity. They valued relationships, but never at the cost of integrity. They knew that a connection worth keeping is a connection that welcomes clarity. So today, be kind by being clear, because the deepest relationships are not the ones that avoid tension, but the ones that grow through it. And in a world full of noise, half-truths and masks, your honesty may be the most loving thing you ever give. 14. Scheduled reflection breaks. Pausing to live with intention. Life moves fast. Sometimes so fast that we forget to ask where we're going or why. We react, we decide, we commit, and before we know it, another week has passed. But were we present for it? Or were we swept along by momentum disguised as purpose? The Stoics believed that an unexamined life isn't just inefficient, it's dangerous. Without reflection, our habits become unconscious, our values blur, our days fill up, but our lives feel strangely empty. That's why they practiced self-inquiry. Not once a year, not when things fell apart, but regularly, calmly, quietly, and with brutal honesty. You can do the same. Start with a simple ritual, the weekly pause. Once a week, choose a quiet space, set a 30-minute timer, and ask yourself a few essential questions. What decisions did I make this week? Were they aligned with my values? When did I feel most like myself? When did I feel off track? What drained me? What filled me? What did I learn about others and about myself? You don't need perfect answers. You only need attention, because awareness creates alignment, and alignment creates peace. Think of it like tuning an instrument. Without regular adjustment, even the finest strings fall out of harmony. Your life is no different. Reflection isn't a detour, it's how you stay on course. Don't wait for burnout or regret to force the pause. Choose it. Make space for silence, even just once a week. Let the dust settle. Let your thoughts catch up with your actions. Let your deeper voice, the one buried under busyness, speak again. You may be surprised by what it has to say, because in a noisy world, the wisest thing you can do isn't to shout louder, but to stop, breathe, and listen. 15. Living by virtue, choosing integrity over impulse. When Nelson Mandela walked out of prison after 27 years of captivity, the world expected a man hardened by hatred. But instead, he walked out with grace, with clarity, with forgiveness. And when asked how he could forgive those who took nearly 3 decades of his life, he said, "As I walked out the door toward my freedom, I knew that if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison. That is not weakness. That is virtue in action." Virtue, in Stoic philosophy, is not a vague ideal. It's the foundation of a good life. It's strength without cruelty, courage without arrogance, self-restraint without repression. It's choosing to live by principles even when emotion tempts you to betray them. In a world driven by reaction, by outrage, by pride, by impulse, living by virtue is a quiet rebellion. The Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." It's not about moralizing, it's about modeling. Each day presents hundreds of small choices: to retaliate or to respond, to seek attention or to serve quietly, to speak truth or stay silent out of fear. The virtuous life isn't built in speeches, it's built in these moments. You don't need a title or platform to live with virtue. You just need intention, consistency, and the willingness to act in alignment with your deepest values, even when it costs you something. Think of the people you admire most. It's not their success alone that moved you. It's how they carried it, with dignity, with humility, with courage. That's the power of virtue. It leaves a legacy that trends and algorithms never will. Ask yourself, what virtues define the person I want to be? In what moments do I abandon them, and why? How can I return to them, not as rules, but as a way of being? Virtue is not perfection. You will fall. But each time you return to your principles, you strengthen them. And slowly, your life takes the shape of something unshakable, not because it's easy, but because it's true. Mandela was once asked if he ever doubted his path. He replied, "I am not a saint, unless you think of a saint as a sinner who keeps on trying." That is Stoicism at its core. Not flawless performance, but faithful persistence. So, as this journey comes to a close, ask yourself one final thing. Will I live by reaction, or will I rise by virtue? Because in the end, storms pass, history fades, but character remains. You've just traveled through 15 habits, not as isolated tips, but as part of a deeper path. A path that began with self-reconnection, learning to pause, to listen, to return to who you really are beneath the noise. Then came inner fortification, building unshakable strength, not through force, but through mastery of your mind, your fears, and your values. And finally, sustainable living, crafting a life that flows from within, one rooted in clarity, restraint, and deep alignment. This wasn't just a list, it was a map. Now it's your turn to walk it. So pause, reflect, and share with us in the comments. Which of the 15 habits are you starting with today? And if something in this video stirred something in you, a thought, a decision, a shift, don't let it fade. Like, share, and subscribe, not for us, but for the part of you that's ready to live differently, because change doesn't come from watching content. It comes from watching yourself and choosing to act. This isn't the end of the journey. It's the first step of a better one. So ask yourself, and don't rush the answer. In a year from now, will you remember 2025 as the year you drifted or the year you woke up? The choice is yours, and it starts now.